Hi, this is Tommaso Brazzini, and I'm presenting a work about land restoring after intense agricultural hazelnut exploitation in Catalonia. This is the outline of the talk, and after the brief description of the case study area and the soil threat, I'll discuss about business as usual scenario and what I propose as a future conservation restoration scenario, with also an interview with an expert in soil restoration. So this is the case study area. It's a plot located in Catalonia in Spain, close to the city of Tarragona, and this is on the right. This is the plot as seen from the satellite, and the area in the study is an old hazelnut agricultural exploitation, which apparently is and the case studies area it presents like a nice scenario, a nice landscape, and this is the plot with some problems that we will see in the following slides. So basically, the main soil threat in this case is the water erosion, because the main causes are, first of all, this is a land on slopes without retaining measures. Also, as we can see here, the soil is quite bare. There is no cover crops for retaining any water or sedimentation, and poor water infiltration, which creates gullies, as we can see here in the image, and it cracks the soil, and it does not allow to infiltrate the water. As we can see from the satellite here, it's really interesting to see how on the land we can see those cracks all over the plot, and these are caused by the water erosion and sedimentation at the downhill. So basically, the main thing here is that the topsoil is completely deprived, and the soil is mostly rocky, as we can see here, and so basically the land is already in an advanced state of degradation. And in terms of on-site consequences, the soil productivity is reduced over time. And at the moment, we can see just a few pioneers plants, which are not really enough to create nice, good organic matter and good topsoil on the land. And in terms of off-site problems, basically the mud flooding will always invade the road anytime there is rainfall. And this can cause problems to locals, to people running by the road. So this is a big problem. There are similar patches of land in the nearby areas which are suffering the same problems. Basically, land on slopes and strong agricultural exploitation. So the main causes and drivers of the present problem is that it was an agricultural exploitation using techniques which are not conservative, let's say, because there were a lot of use of a lot of herbicide and pesticide. So basically the soil remained bare, exposed to wind and water erosion. The other thing is that the land is abandoned. So basically, if it is abandoned, there is no maintenance, no conservative measures taken, and the land will basically degrade over time. So who are involved in this case? Well, I believe that the region council should be in charge of those abandoned lands, and the owners and previous owners should be in charge of using conservative or restorative practices on soil to avoid this kind of strong degradation. And if nothing is done, what will happen? Well, I believe that the fertile soil will completely deplete on the land, on the plot, and strong mud flooding on the road, much more severe than what we have seen in the previous pictures, and the land becoming completely unproductive. So this is really a crucial point. So we basically, to think about restoration, we have to think about managing water, nutrient, and soil runoff. And what I've proposed is basically in such a plot to the creation of and maintenance of bench terraces or swales. To basically, the main thing is the water infiltration. Water does not infiltrate in that plot at the moment. So to improve the fertility, we need to make somehow the water to infiltrate. And another way to do that is to put cover crops as a way to accumulate water, but also organic matter into the soil and avoiding runoff. The leguminous is a nice way to put cover crops without the need of nitrogen, because they can fix it from the atmosphere. Also, another possible thing is once the soil has recovered, the use of forest, put the forest, an edible forest maybe, to provide fruit, for example, to locals, and of course avoiding pyrophytic trees, and so to avoid the fire spread. So what I expect? Well, I would expect the reduction or avoidance of mud flooding during rainfalls, but also nutrients, soil and water conservation on bench terraces with whales. In this way, you can attain improved fertility of the soil with increased amount of organic matter. And in this context, in this socio-economic context, there is an interesting thing here in Spain, which is the Banco de Tierras, which put in contact people with land that need somebody to work the land because they could not work anymore, with people that that need land to cultivate. So this would be an interesting thing to avoid abandonment of the land, and at the same time to teach people how to implement conservation measures, such as the permaculture that is diffused all over the world. And so I asked to an expert in soil restoration, Professor Richard Wade from Permaculture Institute in Monsanto, and I asked him two questions. First one, why did exploitation keep going with the structural practices? Well, basically, what he believes is that exploitation dates back to the 50s when EU gave subsidies for production of hazelnut in the regions. But this didn't really question the idea of ecological results of the practices. And so basically, the owner kept going with conventional agriculture until the land could not sustain anymore the practice and degraded. And for that reason, it left abandoned. And could the idea of Banco de Tierras scenario help in the present situation? Well, it could help the succession, so basically old people passing to young people the land, but it had nothing to do with ecological conservative practices. So this land is basically completely unproductive, so it is unprofitable to produce food from the land. But in the case of receiving subsidies, for example, from the EU to practice the regenerative practices to the land, then it could be a fruitful concept for a regeneration example. So, which is the take-home message? Well, I believe that conventional agriculture can be really detrimental for soil life, and also that lots of land are left in disuse, abandoned, while many people are left without lands, basically. And the two can be joined with the addition of an important thing, the conservative practices useful for the soil life. And I'm expecting to basically make people be more conscious of the soil degradation practices and spread the word of interchanging of land. Also be part of the change and create community, join NGO for land restoration, which is something that the world needs. And at a policy level, it is a must to make a shift to conservation practices in agriculture and to care for abandoned land and implement conservation and restoration measures. So thank you very much. I would like to thank all my colleagues.